Good morning, everyone. We apologize for the delay, and we are really happy that you can join us for today's webinar, What is Your Brand Worth? This webinar is derived from the USC RUI Online New Media Management Certificate, and I hope you'll find the information interesting and useful enough that you'll consider taking additional classes. My name is Caroline Robinson, and I am currently the National Marketing Director of the Sprint Prepaid Group. I have roughly about 15 years of marketing experience with a variety of companies, including Sony Music Entertainment, Coca-Cola, Colgate-Palmolive, and currently Sprint. And at Sprint, I'm responsible for marketing for 4 of our brands, Boost Mobile, now Version Mobile, recently acquired by Sprint, Assurance Wireless, which is a government-subsidized wireless brand, and Common Sense Wireless, which was just introduced in Walmart stores roughly a month ago. So I've launched and relaunched a number of brands, and I've also worked across a range of organizations, including Blue Chip. I've had my own business. I've worked for subsidiaries. So I have a lot of experience in consumer marketing across a range of categories. So today's subject is really, what is your brand worth? And unfortunately, that is literally something that can take an entire semester to teach. But I'm going to try to condense this into 25 minutes, and I'm going to specifically talk about brand consistency as a means of driving brand worth. So this is not really a class. It's more like a quick conversation. It's not like a full meal. It's more like a snack. But I hope you'll find the information valuable. So let's talk a little bit about brand consistency as a way to drive the worth of your brand. So in today's discussion, we're going to do a couple of things. The first thing we'll do is define brand consistency. The second thing we'll do is talk about what marketing elements contribute to brand consistency. And finally, we'll explore brand consistency as a means to maintain and increase the worth of your brand. So what is brand consistency? It's when a business utilizes messaging that stays true to a core brand proposition. Now, I don't want to assume that you know what core brand proposition is, so let's talk a little bit about that. So a core brand proposition is really, what does your brand stand for? So who's your target market? Are you targeting baby boomers? Are you targeting women 25 to 49? Are you targeting young males 18 to 24? So within a core brand proposition, you know who your target is, you know what product you're offering, and you know what is unique about your product relative to other brands, and you know what your product stands for, you know what makes it different versus other brands. So that's what a core brand proposition is. And from that proposition, you develop kind of marketing or advertising or messaging across a range of consumer touch points, and you have to make sure that that messaging is consistent. Now, let's talk a little bit about touch points. So anytime a consumer interacts with your brand, that is considered a touch point. That means that as soon as a consumer gets up in the morning and they turn on the television, or they get ready for work, or they're walking down the street to their office, or they're in their office, or just doing what they do on a daily basis, you have a huge opportunity to influence that consumer with information about your brand. So just think about it. Things like retail, TV, print. So some of these things are just what consumers see as they're walking through life on a day-to-day basis. And then there's also ways that they touch your brand where they actively seek information about your brand, like your website, when they call customer care, local marketing. So the point is, these are just some of the ways that your brand touches consumers on a day-to-day basis. And when you look at all these touch points, because it's not just one, you have to make sure that the message that they are taking away is consistent and makes sense and isn't all over the place and doesn't say, 10 different things, because that causes a lot of confusion. And that causes consumers to question what your brand stands for and if it's even worth considering purchasing or engaging with. So here's an example from Boost Mobile of a project that we worked on where we really worked hard to make sure that the brand was consistent across multiple consumer touch points. So last year we did a sponsorship with the Indy 500 and Racing League, and Danica Patrick. And in using her, and we really wanted to make sure that we were building credibility because we wanted to expand our audience. We were previously a brand that primarily focused on sort of metropolitan urban areas. We wanted to broaden our brand because we thought that the opportunity was bigger than places like New York and Chicago. And racing was a huge way to get into middle markets, smaller markets for Boost Mobile. And so we decided to partner with Danica Patrick and the Indy 500. And here's some examples of the marketing materials that we developed to support that promotion. So as you'll see, we did cinema advertising, and when we bought cinema advertising, we actually defined the target to the movie theater, and they actually ran it in movie theaters in zip codes where our target lives. You can actually get that specific in terms of targeting your brand to a specific audience. We developed TV, we developed print, we had web, we had a national promotion. But as you can see, aesthetically, there's a lot of consistency from a brand standpoint. So the color palette is the same, the typeface is the same, the Pantones are the same, her uniform, we always use her in a certain manner. So here's a great example of consistency across multiple touch points in order to target a certain audience. And we also developed messaging to really take a very comparative stance against other wireless carriers, and we very cleverly sort of married it with the whole concept of racing. So you see some of the messaging, kind of other plans, eat our dust, pop your clutch, things of that nature. So here's just an example of brand consistency. So what are specific ways to ensure brand consistency? So let's be very specific about this. The first thing is that all your marks must be trademarked and really emanate from one source. So really, you should have the same logo or a very limited number of logos on all communication. Really, you should have one logo. So, and you shouldn't really allow anyone to sort of change the colors unless you let them, but really one logo, just one. Same typeface. In the instance of Boost Mobile, we actually developed a unique typeface that we actually trademarked just for all of our advertising. So anytime you see a Boost Mobile ad, you'll only see typeface that is unique to Boost. Also, you can't allow a lot of deviation. So you can't. So for example, let's take the Coca-Cola logo. You're not going to see a yellow version of that logo. You're not going to see a green version of that logo. There's very specific colors that must be used. There's very specific measurements in terms of how you use that logo. So you really have to be very specific in terms of limiting deviation. And I use Nike as a great example of a company that has stayed pretty much consistent since their inception. They always use the Nike swoosh. Since 1978, they always use the same typeface. And what you'll see, and again, they're targeting a range of people with a range of athletic interests. But what you'll see is that their logo never changes. There's very limited deviation, and as soon as you just see that swoosh and you know it's Nike because it's so ingrained in your brain. And that's one of the reasons that Nike is one of the most valuable brands in the world, because they've stayed very consistent and they've been able to deliver that message of athletic performance and consistency in their brand. Okay, here's an example of a design language system, and this is with Virgin Mobile. So as you can see, and I pieced together a couple of things. Here's the system, right? So here's the color Pantones, the only color Pantones that you can use when using the Virgin brand. We actually, again, developed an original typeface.